and we are on the air. Rob Brown in Memphis, Brendan Martin, Ocala. Got a great show in store
It's like
for
the
you.
Matrix.
Yep, it is. Coach Ellis Johnson's going to check in with us, talk about, hey, why 3 defensive coordinators at Florida, his analysis of the Super Bowl matchups as only a coach can do. Frank Duffy in north of Atlanta. Doug Dean in the Magic City of Birmingham.
And I found the horn, the old Buddy Martin horn. I found that today.
Well, we need the horn, absolutely.
I feel like today we need the horn, and I don't know what the rule is or white or black because I've been watching my Yellowstone, but I feel like it's after Labor Day.
I was at Hewlett and Dunn yesterday, and I was thinking about hats for you. Well, it's still winter, so you need.
And I've been
watching.
You have
a black and a white hat?
I do. I have black one, but I've been watching Yellowstone, and I see how they're wearing different kinds of hats now. Now I'm getting trained up on the whole thing. So
they do it, man. It's going to be fun. Beautiful, beautiful day. It is. Yesterday we were at 73 degrees. Now we're in the 40s. My sinuses are going crazy. Hot tea and honey that Audrey made me.
It's cloudy down here.
Yeah, it is. Hey, take a picture of that QR code with your phone. Be a subscriber to the show. And remember, we got a great channel here. That this show, the Buddy Martin Show, is on 9 Eastern, Monday through Thursday. And we've added a show with AU, Auburn Undercover, with Ronnie Sanders on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 p.m. Central. So look, we are packing in the content. We're going to keep you informed, and let's go ahead and let the Bulls out into the ring. Coach Ellis Johnson, a 6'3", 193-pound sophomore from Winsboro, South Carolina. Frank Duffy at 6'8", 420.
Yeah, it's about right after New Orleans.
And Doug Dean, we don't know where Doug is, but he'll be on with us momentarily.
Chairman of the board.
He's probably stuck in traffic going over 280.
He's in a deer stand. You know that. He's up in a deer stand.
Look, he just got here. I like him to come a little late, in it late. We need his own theme music. Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas Dean, a.k.a. chairman of the board.
The dose, baby. The dose.
Hey, I heard you SOB slandering me about me.
No, I had your back. I had your back, dog. Whatever.
Doug,
I'm afraid of you.
I figured you were in the 280 melees of traffic. It doesn't matter what time of day. Coach Ellis Johnson, we've got Doug Dean in Birmingham.
We are not worthy, Coach Johnson.
We're ready to talk some football, man. First off, if you can, tell us, I know Brendan mentioned about they got 3 defensive coordinators, it looks like, at Florida. Now, you've been a defensive coordinator. You've got national championship rings. You've won a lot of games as a coach. Talk about that scenario. Would you like that if you were in the on the staff?
I can't remember if we talked about this the other day or if it was somewhere else.
We did.
But as long as everything is clearly defined from the top down, meaning from the head coach, exactly what the coordinator positions are and who's in charge of what, it's not a problem. The problem comes when you throw somebody a title to get them hired or keep them from leaving. And then, you end up with them trying to think they're in charge of game plan and this, that, and the other. The only time I've been associated with, when I was at Clemson, coached, I was working with Tommy West. And one year, the first year, I was not the coordinator. And the second year, he gave me a coordinator title, but we kept a co-coordinator situation. He wanted one of us to organize the plan during the week, and the other one to call it. And I didn't like that because I've never been able to figure that one out. But he wanted both of us to stay there, and I did too, because the other coach, Miles Aldridge, was a heck of a football coach too. But anyhow, that's the only time I've personally been involved with it. But I've seen it a lot of places, and it's all usually about you can't go across campus and get the guy a pay raise unless you come up with some title.
Yeah.
So it's all about these administrators and stuff. Sometimes it doesn't mean a damn thing, and sometimes it is very specifically defined. But knowing
an egocentric one.
Yeah, but knowing Billy, he's got it all defined. Now, I assume those 3 guys clearly understand what they're doing and what they're not doing and so forth. You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen, especially you get in the middle of the third quarter and the third down, and you get a discussion going on, you're in trouble.
That's right.
Coach, it reminds me of Banks that they would give that was early in my career. They would give all of us the title of officer in the company. So if you got 3 defensive coordinators, you may have no defensive coordinator.
Still saying.
Wait, Coach, here it is. Brendan puts up these graphics. It's unreal. Ron Roberts, executive head coach. Defense, Vinny Sunseri. Co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach, Robert Bala. Co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. So here's your layout.
It's Vinny. Vinny's come from Jacksonville. He's, excellent coach. He's the co-defensive coordinator for safeties, and then Robert Bala is now hired yesterday, co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. So obviously Coach, since the last time we spoke, you spoke on just having 2. We added a third yesterday. That's why we brought it back up.
Yeah, I've seen where someone gets assistant head coach for defense. That's what I had when I was at Spurrier.
I mean, that just feels like a very George Costanza kind of position, It's like,
yeah, I mean, I
the human fund.
What who's in charge of what? That's
my kind of job, Coach.
Brendan, I really want to like Ron Roberts, but there's the unpardonable sin of rushing 2 on 4th and 31.
Stop.
Yeah.
Man.
No.
Oh, I know.
You gotta let that go, Doug.
My thing is that I just felt like defense is one of the shining spots, especially towards the end of the year with Florida. I just don't know why you don't want to go mess with that a little bit, but hey, I'm just a guy wearing a cowboy hat and an orange shirt. So
he's bringing in some really very experienced guys. And in the case of Vinny, I think Vinny was a coordinator at a lower level, but coach doesn't want to give those up, because the next time he's job hunting, he's nothing but a linebacker coach, and he wants his coordinator job at another university. And so those titles help. I think agents tell them you need to get that or something. But, it's all semantics if the head man has it clearly defined, and those 3 guys understand it totally.
Yeah. One question came, and I want to go to Doug and Frank here, but Mildred in Columbiana, Alabama said to you, Coach, if you ever said any curse words on the headsets during the ball game. Never, Coach.
No.
Moving right along, Doug.
Coach, I'm being a little bit partisan Auburn guy here, but I think you've got enough distance from your boss, Gus Malzahn, from that magical 2013 year that I'm going to take my chances that you can be blunt and candid, because you always are, Coach. And that's what we love about you. And you've had some tremendous iconic moments in your career. But I want to take you back into that, the couple or 3 plays leading up to the final dramatic play in the kick 6 Iron Bowl. In one sense, it doesn't matter whose idea it was. But when Coach Saban, when Gus got a timeout and you're waiting for Alabama to attempt a 57-yard field goal, and Auburn was playing normal punt coverage defense there, and someone noticed that the damn thing was returnable. And I've heard that it was you that had said, hey, get Chris Davis in there, punt return left, or whatever you guys called it. But tell us, without it being, too torturous, we Auburn fans need to create some more of those moments and not constantly have to go back 11 years to feel happy. But what was inside that play leading up to swapping? Was it Ryan Smith out with Chris Davis and making it a potential return? Tell us, Coach.
Yeah, well, if you ask me to remember the few plays leading up to it, I can't.
I bet you remember that one, though.
I'd be talking with Coach Spurrier sometime. He'd bring up a game we played each other 6 years earlier, and would start talking about specific plays in the third quarter. And I was like, Coach, I think that happened in the first half.
That's like Rob Brown.
But he was like photogenic, and I couldn't remember anything. But what happened, of course, they ran a draw play, which, in my opinion, was pretty successful, and he got out of bounds. But the clock thing starts. Now, we didn't know it was going to be that length of time to get it settled, but actually it was like forever. So this thing was crazy, and you can't believe the conversations on the phone. But when they had that situation, then I said, Coach, I think they probably just try to throw one in the end zone. He said, no, he's got that other young kicker that hadn't come in yet, and he has this distance. And I immediately said, hey, if they try a field goal from right here, we need to put somebody back there and return it. Well, Rodney Garner was in charge of our field goal PAT block because he was the defensive line coach. A lot of people do that. So the defensive staff we were in charge of blocking field goals and PATs. Well, we had never worked on anything like that. And they said, we don't have, what do we do? I said, well, whoever's supposed to drop out and watch for fakes, just tell them to go back, just line them up back there. They're not going to run a fake. They can't get 45 yards on a fake. So we took the person who was usually the safety watching fakes and put them back there, and then told everybody just don't rough the kicker and peel around to our bench and don't, all the other things, all blocks above the waist, no blocks in the back, yada, yada, yada. So that's how it was executed. The kids just deserve all the credit in the world. But what happened, the person who was usually our safety for fakes was Ryan Smith. And the person who's coming off the edge to block the kick is Davis.
Oh, wow. So swap.
So, and so we'd already put him out there. We didn't have a plan. We'd never worked on it before. So it was the easiest way to keep everybody from getting screwed up. But Gus said, hey, I'm going to ice the kicker. And he said, when we get time out, we need somebody else back there to run the kick back. I said, who's back there? And they said, Ryan Smith. I said, oh, hell yeah, we got to get somebody else back there.
We don't need no edge rusher.
If you'll remember, we blocked the field goal earlier in the game, and it came right to Ryan Smith. It was like a little pop-up, and he tripped over his own feet. And he went clear sailing down the right sideline. He fell over his own feet.
That could have been the game winner.
Man.
He said, we need Chris Davis back there. And they said, well, he's coming off the edge to block the kick. We said, just switch him. Just switch him.
Wow.
Coach, we were frantically doing this, but as it turned out, we had about 5 minutes to get it done. So,
Coach, prophetically, you'll remember the trip to Knoxville. Chris Davis, I think on an identical, it was a punt return there in the first half. He housed that one down the left sideline. So, you had a dress rehearsal for that return.
Well, he was our return guy. But we were in a panic. If they were going to try a field goal, we took our scheme and without changing it all up, we just said, hey, that guy's usually the safety guy. Just think about it and catch the ball and run it back. But it happened to be the wrong guy.
Coach, is there sort of an unwritten code? Come on, give us some inside baseball, Coach. An unwritten code, I could certainly understand where the etiquette of coordinators or staffers, that they might have the genius play coming from the press box or on the sideline, but when the game's over, you let it be the head coach's credit. Does that happen in football?
Well, to me, everything that goes on the field is the head coach is in charge, and if he wants to tell people something, then he can tell them, but you don't go in telling things, that play I called in the third quarter was just unbelievable.
If you want to keep your job.
Yes.
Usually the press can figure that out too, and they ask you the questions and so forth.
That is so fascinating. Thank you, Coach.
Coach, here's a funny picture I want to show you real quick. This is right after the game. My son Wilson and me in the locker room. You know who that is in the middle? Nosa Igwe out of Mansfield, Texas.
I can't see that far, but
yeah. So we're talking to him, and I said, Nosa, was that play at the end planned? And I don't think anybody really knew at the time, but I think he got his finger on a block kick. But that was a cool time. And your memory and your recall is absolutely amazing. Frank?
Well, on the phone, I can remember all of that. But plays, I can't remember plays.
And you just can't remember what your wife sent you to the store for this morning. No, I'm that way too.
I write it down.
There you go. Well, Coach, I got to tell you, on that play, half of Alabama was cheering, and the entire state of Louisiana was running down with Chris. I'm telling you, we wanted y'all to beat Saban so bad that day. But what was really cool about that play is that all the blockers lined up perfectly and gave him an alley down that left side. And you could tell as soon as he got past those linemen, he was gone. And the only thing you had to worry about was his posse that was going with him didn't trip him up, because they're looking up at the crowd. They're having a great time.
Robinson, Therese.
I was like, get the hell away! Don't trip him.
That's the thing. One of the things that's lost on the play. I mean, everybody gives Chris Davis accolades because it was a fantastic return. But the way our players executed that thing, you'd think we repped it every Friday. And I mean, they had never done it before. And, you give them all the little pointers before they go out on the field. All blocks above the waist.
Perfect.
In front. Stay on your feet. No penalties, yada, yada, yada. And then they go out and do it like we've been practicing it every week.
And
it was flawless almost. There's three blocks out there that people don't really
destroyed them. And Gary
as good as any block on any punt return we had the whole year.
Gary Danielson.
One of them was just a guy shielding a guy. He was very smart. I mean, avoiding the penalty.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the scariest moment was, I'm looking at my daughter asked me, sitting in the south end zone on my birthday, that game, Coach, asked me, why was I stunned? And I it was easy to answer that. I was watching for those refs to call a review. Did he step out of bounds?
Well, remember Vern
Lundquist. Guys, y'all have been to games there, and if it's a big game, like Alabama's a pretty big game. But if it's packed, when we would come down from the press box to go back around to the locker room to meet, in the locker room with coach and everything, you could hardly wade through the crowd. Usually we had a security guy to help us. That night, y'all saw the field. So we get our stuff together, and we go down the elevator, and we walk out of the stadium, and it looked like July the 14th. It was nobody out there.
That's wild.
Nobody.
Wow.
And we walked around and got in the locker room. Hell, there ain't nobody in the locker room. So it took them 5 or 10 minutes just to even get to the locker room. But all the fans were on the field. There was nobody outside the stadium.
Well, Coach, I can tell you there were 45-year-old divorcees coming out of those hedges like they were dropping out of the sky like it was Christmas.
Hey, I talked to your colleague, Coach Philip Lally, Ellis, and he gets a big assist in grabbing Chris Davis and running it. Phillips big enough to run interference for anybody, and as he was getting Chris to the post-game interview, he was telling them, handle this right, be careful what you say, be respectful, and because I don't think Chris Davis had that quickly after the game could comprehend. I couldn't, that I just immortalized myself for all time on most dramatic plays in the history of sports.
I'm shocked you wasn't out of breath after that 110-yard sprint down the sideline of glory.
Coach, and that's the thing about it is these memories. I mean, I can remember Ryan Smith out of Cordova, Alabama. Chris Davis went to Woodlawn, and Woodlawn has given us Bobby Bowden, Greg Carr, Greg Gant, the punter in Bama Punt, David Langner, Chris Davis, Carlos Dansby. Woodlawn is Doug, you got to say, of all the great high schools in Birmingham, Woodlawn is like Melrose High School in Memphis, a big rival.
Good to Auburn. I'm sure they've been good to Alabama over the years too. I don't have that memorized.
Coach, let's get. I want to get into something here. Super Bowl coming up this weekend. I saw Tom Brady that was a really good exchange with the Fox and Friends crew this morning. He obviously the smartest one for sure. But he was asked about his career, and he said, "Look, my parents never put limits on me or governors. When I lived in California, I wanted to go to Michigan. They didn't say, go somewhere where you can play earlier or it's too far away. They just said, go for it." And then he said, another thing really important, he goes, I was the slowest guy at the NFL Combine. But my mother was like, oh, you're fast. You're fine. She goes, they never said anything.
Gotta love moms.
Yeah. So, Coach, when to me, pound for pound, the strongest player in Auburn history may have been Harold Hallman out of Macon, Georgia, Southwest High School, who played in the early 80s for Auburn, or Carl Lawson out of Milton High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. You've coached some guys, but when you've coached a guy who didn't believe in himself, How angry did that make you as a coach? Because you made it through the Citadel, and John Hartwell was on yesterday, who played at the Citadel.
Good buddy.
Could have walked on at Auburn in basketball, but went to the Citadel. And Riley Leonard, the quarterback for Notre Dame, his father played basketball at the Citadel. But how angry does that make you when a player doesn't believe in himself and you know he has talent?
It's frustrating, but it doesn't make me angry. And you see a lot of those kids more so when I was coaching high school ball than college. Those are some of the things I missed in coaching college players. It was more like a teaching, mentoring situation with high school players. If I wouldn't have had to go back in the classroom, I'd have stayed in high school coaching. But when they told me I was going back into math class, I told them I was making $30,000 at Spartanburg High School, and I went to the Citadel to coach linebackers to $18,500 because I was not going back.
I ain't doing that algebra no more. Y'all can have that.
When you go out on the football field, almost all of those kids wanted to be out there, and they were out there because they liked it. When you went into math class, you didn't have but about 2 or 3 in the class of 25 or 30 that really wanted to be in there.
Yeah.
So the first thing you had to do is hang out your shingle as a psychologist or something, and then you had to try to teach them a little bit of math that they didn't get in the 3rd grade. So it just drove me nuts.
Coach, speaking of the psyche of players, what was it like coaching a very disciplined player or team at the Citadel as compared to a Division I where a lot of them there are trying to make it to the next level or have other things that are on their mind? Where the Citadel guys, I mean, they were out there for the love of the game and were highly disciplined because that's why they got to the Citadel in the first place.
Well, I don't mean to. I love my school, and I'm very proud of it. And I look back now, after 40-something, 50 years, some of the things I realize now that it did for me. Mm-hmm. But those kids are no more disciplined than some of the kids we had at Alabama or anywhere else. Mm-hmm. They probably, I don't know, they were sacrificed to go to a school like that in order to play football at a decent level. Yeah. And that's what, hell, I went there. So, I mean, I had been there and played football, and I knew I wasn't the most disciplined person in the world. Yep. But I understand your question. And the thing they were motivated. They wanted to be coached, and they wanted to play hard, and mm-hmm. they put up with some of the stuff at the Citadel simply because they wanted to play that level of football. But it is the difference. Not more so at any other college, but there are a lot more distractions when they're in universities. There's a little bit more free time, a little bit more, you don't know where they're living. You don't know what they're doing at night. You don't know who's living beside them. And even when the kid's not the one looking for trouble, sometimes trouble finds them.
Sure.
Yep. Doug?
Coach, this is tactical, kind of defensive and offensive scheme, strategic question. And you can, so that we don't turn this into too much of an Auburn show as we've done the first half hour and talk about any SEC team, SEC offense you want. But I think our listeners, I certainly would like some education on this notion that defenses have caught up with Hugh Freeze's offense or Billy Napier's or, Georgia and DeBoer, Coach DeBoer. He's only in his 2nd year at Alabama, but is there something to it, or is it a matter of that any offensive system will work if you get the right personnel for it and you can go execute? Did you feel like as a defensive mind that there were at times you had figured out tendencies to the point where you essentially had nullified how that offense could work and sort of caught up with it? Talk about that, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, there's some different questions in there, and almost answered all of them is yes. But the offense usually innovates before the defenses do, just a little bit, and the rules have been changed and changed and changed, and they gradually have been changed. They help offenses. But the one thing that's happened here in the last 4 or 5 years is some of the rules have changed that have slowed these fast-paced teams down. Stuff such as if you sub, I get to sub. And that has messed them up really bad. Now, it ain't going to shock me if they come up with some other change in that rule, because when they're trying to go fast and they send a receiver out there or they change any one guy, and I can tell now that these teams are orchestrating their substitutions where they can respond just enough time to be legal, but it's slow enough to keep the offense from being able to snap the ball. So it's slowing them down, and it's also taking away their ability to check their offensive play and audible. So that's one thing that's helped. But I do think you see these things, and then Hugh was kind of on the cutting edge. Gus was on the cutting edge. The one that was really way out there was Art Briles, man. Back when he was at Houston, before he even got to Baylor. I mean, he was doing some stuff. We played him one year when I was at Mississippi State. And one of my old mentors, Charlie Rizzo, who was my linebacker coach, he coached that at TCU with Pat Sullivan, and he's been at Rice, and he's been several other places. And I called him to talk to him about this stuff. I said, hey, man, these crazy formations he's running. And he would put his offensive lineman out there on the ball and have all the skill guys run to the bench between each play. And you didn't know who was coming back out there. So you didn't know if they're going to have 2 tight ends, they're going to have 4 wides, or you didn't know what was coming. Then I called Charlie, and he said, well, you got to figure it out and do what you do, because I don't run your system. But he said, one thing I'm going to tell you, don't run zero coverage. Don't run man coverage. Well,
does that force you to run base a lot, Coach? Because you don't have time to substitute?
What they did a lot of times, he was one of the first guys that jet motion to cross formation. And if you're trying to play man-to-man, sometimes you can't chase those guys. So what you try to do is pass it off. But if you got a center fielder, you just let them swap. And so you can catch the motion over there and get somebody back and all this. But you got 4 across man or 5 man, what do you want to say? There's nobody deep. Somebody's got to chase, or somebody's got to keep bumping it over. And he told me, said, don't do it. And so about the 3rd or 4th series, I ran zero coverage. That damn jet motion went across there, and somebody turned the inside receiver, ran just a little seam route, 30-yard touchdown. But it was crazy stuff. And I've kind of gotten off the subject, but offenses usually get a little bit ahead of defenses because the rules allow them to, and then defenses have to catch up.
Yeah.
But what you also said in there is, if you got the right players in the right positions and you got a sound scheme, every offensive play is a good play, and every defense will stop it. And both of them are true.
Thank you. A great answer.
Coach, I got a question for you. So I wanted to double check to make sure I was right. I thought you were DC at Southern Miss with Coach Hallman back in the late 80s, and I double checked to make sure before I asked this question. What was it like going up and practicing and scheming against that kid from Kiln, Mississippi every day at practice? That future Hall of Famer, great quarterback, Brett Favre. What was it like in practice every day? Because most players, when they say, look, I was great because I went up against the Hall of Famer every day, 3 hours a day, knocking heads with him. It was easy to go play another team. What was it like scheming against him during those practices?
It was. I'll tell you some good little stories about that. But let me tell you the first thing. I was at East Carolina University before I went to Southern Miss, and I went to Alabama when I left Southern Miss. 1 year, 2 years, 1 year. Those were the 4 years that Brett Favre was in college. We had to play him when I was at East Carolina. We had to play him when I was at Alabama. And in between, I was on his team.
That's pretty cool.
And let me just tell you, I guess I was about 20-2 against Brett. And the 2 losses were when I wasn't on his team.
That's great.
Beat Auburn and Alabama in the same year, Coach.
Same year.
Yeah, I was already gone that year, but we played Auburn well the years I was there, but we didn't beat them. And we didn't beat Alabama either. That was after I'd gone to Alabama.
Coach,
but, Brett was just unbelievable. Anytime we got on the bus or the plane to go play, you always just felt like you had a shot, man.
Sure.
And we weren't a great defense, but we could make about 10 or 12 stops in the 16 series. We'd make anywhere from 8 to 10 stops. We're going to probably win the game.
Yeah.
But the one thing I remember was spring practice, I think could have been preseason. And we're going through the buffet line at the training table, and I'm about 2 people down from Brett. And I pulled out a $20 bill, and I said, hey, would you just let us have a few? Let me get about 2 or 3 picks today so Hallman will leave me alone.
Coach, I was curious. Sorry if I walked on you, Rob. it looks to me, I mean, it's nothing new that given the choice, any offensive coordinator, head coach who's an offensive mind would love to have his quarterback also be mobile, at least moderately mobile with his feet. And if you've got an elite runner like the guy that just was named NFL Rookie of the Year, go Tigers.
Go Tigers, baby.
Jay Daniels, unbelievable. But it feels like you almost have to have a mobile QB now because you're not going to keep offensive linemen long enough to get them to the point where they can really give time to throw to a pure pocket passer.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, they're really making an impact in the NFL.
Yeah.
But on the level below that, I think it's absolutely critical. Now the problem is how many of them out there that have a Jaden Daniels arm and a Jaden Daniels feet. You know, that's not that many out there. And if you have to make a choice, you want the arm, because if you go back most closely contested games, the most important thing the quarterback's got to do, he's going to have about 3 or 4 of these 3rd down and 7 or more,
Yep.
or 6 or more. And if he can't throw the football out of the pocket, eventually they're going to get it, and you're going to turn it over or something. But if you know, the pros, if you watch the pros practice and you follow them or whatever, they spend 80% of their practice protecting the passer and rushing the passer. In college, that's not so much true. Now, it's changing a little bit, but in college, that's not nearly true. College teams cannot protect the quarterback effectively, consistently. Can't do it because the people they're playing against are too good for them athletically.
Yeah.
Now, in the pros, they work on it and work on it so much. You know, the scheme where the backs and the linemen have got to be on the same page.
Sure.
The quarterback knows where the pressure's coming. It's unblocked. The receivers know that. I mean, they do it and do it and do it and do it. They're not working on wishbone options.
Sure.
They're doing some RPOs now, but not to the extent that the colleges are.
And the young running backs that actually make it to the pros and get playing time, they got to be able to pick up those blocks. They got to be able to chip. They got to do all of that, or they ain't seeing the field.
Yeah, and Coach,
if you got to put a back out there on the field because he can protect and your best ball carrier cannot protect, it's almost like running with a flat tire. It helps the defensive coordinator or the defense understand what's getting ready to happen. It's just, but if you leave that back out there, they can't protect the quarterback. You're rolling dice, man, because it's just one time they need to where he doesn't pick the guy up or can't block the guy, and you've lost your quarterback.
Coach, if as a master of you can teach a master class on defensive scheme strategy and the history of what modern era, what's happened. But I'm sure you followed on some level, and Duff is going to love this question, that unbelievable 2019 LSU offense. What was Joe Brady doing? There's a chicken and egg problem. You don't do what they did without Burrow and Joe Brady and those receivers, not to mention the backs. But what did you see Brady and his compadre doing that caused such problems for defenses?
It was talent. Yeah, I'm not saying he can't coach, but if you look at Buffalo this year, they weren't extremely varied or anything. He's a really good coach, and the thing, I think he brought a system in there that he understood and could change it and adjust. And obviously he had his players understanding it, but they had receivers that you couldn't handle. They had running backs. They had a really good offensive line. And Joe Burrow, I mean, he
could run the ball.
He could run when he needed to run. And I mean, he was just like he'd stand by to make some of the damnedest throws, man. And I mean, looked like he was a 10-year NFL player.
The touchdown run.
You can't defend all that stuff consistently. Sooner or later, they're going to get one on you. And then it's going to open up some things or whatever. But I just think they were one of the most talented offensive football teams that you've seen in college in the last 15 years.
And Coach, with Burrow, he could tuck it, like you said, and just in the national championship game alone, that one run late to set up the score right before halftime, he ran 30-some-odd yards, and then he scored down low another touchdown. But I will tell you, Joe Brady brought them in the summer of that heat in Baton Rouge, started June 1st, and they threw 10,000 balls he threw to those receivers. They were on another level. It was like, you know, and look, we even had a great tight end, Randy Moss's son, great Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Moss.
Yeah, you know, Rob talks about it all the time. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was probably the savior of the whole team, dragging an Alabama linebacker on 3rd and 9, 10 yards, and Bryant Denny to put that one away. So you're right, Coach. That was a one-off offense that we might never see the likes of again. It was on all cylinders. And what they did to dismantle Oklahoma and Clemson in the playoffs, it was special.
It wasn't fair.
They ran
Well,
through
it's like when you watch Jaden Daniels the other day. You keep looking for these real eloquent schemes or something that's getting receivers wide open. They're just running slants, outs, takeoffs. When he throws a slant, they might as well let the receiver have the football before the play. And just because, I mean, he hits them.
Yeah.
They don't even break stride, and their arms don't even stop the very running motion till boom, it's there. They don't have to catch it up here or back here or anything else. Well, hell, coach, it's only a 15-yard throw. Watch some of the other ones do it. You know, some of the best players up there, they throw it on the guy's back hip and get it picked, or they throw it high and they get killed. You know, it's just, I mean, some of the accuracy he threw with. I had not watched him that closely in college, and he was the best quarterback in the NFL at the end of this season.
And Coach, and shocking that Jaden put him at 1A, Bo Nix 1B. 2 rookies coming in there and making it look pretty easy, right?
Absolutely. And the boy up at the Patriots, May. I mean, he's really good. He didn't have any help either.
No. Coach, when you think about what the NFL looks for now, and when we have Jim Nagy on here, executive director of the Reese's Pieces Mobile Senior Bowl, he'll talk about edge rushers, so coveted. You go back just a few years ago, and kind of the running back that was sort of it for being a high draft pick was Trent Richardson out of Escambia County High School in Pensacola, played at Alabama at 9, 10, 11, was the number 4 pick in the draft. And since then, Bijan Robinson went last year out of Texas at 9, but we're not seeing the value put on running backs. It's even trickled down to the college level. Those guys are okay with 12 carries, 15 carries a game. You remember Trey Mason out of Palm Beach Worth Gardens, Florida, 46 carries in the 2013 SEC championship game for 304 yards. Curtis Kuykendall is the all-time record setter when Auburn played Miami, I think in 1944 or something like that, had 332 yards. I wish they would have not let Trey get that record. Missouri couldn't stop him. But do you see cycles like what we're talking about? Like do you remember the great coach of the offensive line at Miami, Art Kehoe? Yep. He talked about this 35 years ago at a conference because Coach E, an offensive line coach I know, coached Division III for 30-something years, said in the future, the wide receiver will be the prima donna in football. Boy, was he right. Talk about that, good, bad, or ugly.
Well, I mean, it's just like my childhood. When you first get that little age, I'm maybe about 7 or 8, 9 years old, you start noticing sports and you get all attached to things and so forth. And my idol was Jim Brown.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, when you go back and look at what he did in such a short period of time and so forth, but the game's changed now simply because it's more spread out. And I think the pros, really, if you go back and look at it, the pros didn't start that as early as the colleges did. Mm-hmm. But now that's what kids all summer long, they go to these passing camps and they're throwing the ball and running routes and all that kind of stuff. So they're coming out of the junior high age right on up through high school and everything. And they make catches now routinely in every other game that you used to see about every 5 years. You'd say, did you see that catch so-and-so made against Georgia?
Yes.
But now it's like, did you see that catch in the first quarter or the third quarter?
Yeah.
It's just different. Now, why did it change? I think the rules changed a little bit, the pass protection rules. In the NFL, hell, you can't hardly touch them after they go 5 yards.
Bubble wrap.
And they're trying to see, the NFL's trying to get people to watch TV, and they know that people don't want to watch a hockey match. And so they're trying to get points and yardage and movement. And they can have some pretty exciting games with a lot of yardage and offense in the pros and not score but 3 touchdowns because they get down in the red zone and it just doesn't. There's too many big people out there in the way, and there's not enough space to do all these passing games because the back line back there is your best friend. So I don't know. I think that's one of the biggest things. The rules have changed.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is they realized that when they were putting all that money in these running backs, and half of them didn't make it past the 6th or 7th year.
Sure. Yeah.
Beat up.
Yeah.
And so that kind of changed it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of little things like that would go into it, but it definitely is a different game now. I was looking at the most valuable player thing on the ESPN site this morning out of curiosity, and obviously only the quarterbacks have won it in many years.
Yeah.
And then you finally see a running back. Then you see some down here. Hell, a defensive lineman won it when Alan Page won it. You hadn't seen anything like that since.
The judge.
But it's just kind of an indication of how much the game's changed. And you won't see a running back win it very often anymore.
Yeah. Coach, I know we got to flip
Go
on
ahead,
to basketball, but and I know, and you're going to be back on with us Monday morning. Okay. So we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl and football and everything like that. And I know Doug's got one more question for you. I just didn't want to wear you out 2 days in a row because we got to get to some SEC basketball.
Yeah, but it's Super Bowl weekend, man.
I thought you wanted to talk about my basketball career.
There you go.
You're going to talk about this.
Coach, I know the listeners are out there deciding whether to make a prop bet on how long the national anthem lasts Sunday, but I want to ask you, I'm a fence sitter on this Super Bowl game, which should be electric, but would you, if you're forced gun at the head, would you bet against history? Nobody three-peats the Super Bowl champion, or would you be careful betting against the great Patrick Mahomes in this game?
Gosh, I don't know. And I'll be honest, I'm not that interested in either team.
Yeah.
Don't have any players that I know real well on either one, and coaches or anything. So just nothing I'm really been interested in checking them out or whatever. But
feels like anybody's game.
I'm probably not the right person to ask. I don't like the Super Bowl anymore. There's too much periphery going on, and you never know what's going to happen to the game.
Sure.
Because it gets too much distractions around it. And hell, college is going to be just as bad if we don't watch out.
Yeah.
But I think that Philadelphia is a more balanced football team. But I think Kansas City has done it before, and Jalen hasn't, and as good as he is, Saquon never has. But them other guys have been there before, and they know, and it's going to come down to some critical plays in that third and fourth quarter. And they've done it before. I just think they may handle it a little bit better. And I'm not going to get into this too far, but I've got concerns about some of the officiating. You look at the statistical things.
We do too.
10 of 11 games, they've been less penalties than the opponent. I mean, after a while, it's almost like they're looking to help them because they know everybody's after them or something. I don't know.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. And look, us conspiracy theorists have been right the last 4 years. I think we're right on this one too.
Well, we always find out 15 years later that some referee was on the tape.
Oh,
We don't know now.
Well, if you're an Auburn fan and you saw a double dribble not called against UVA, you're permanently
no doubt
scarred for life. You really are. I mean, Coach, all right. We're going to do this again Monday morning. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. You are absolutely
great
just
talking.
It's really cool. It's like having Chuck Lavelle on a few weeks ago, a great musician who's been around a long time. Y'all are both the same age. When you are talking, the wisdom that comes from you, it's priceless. And I mean, I can tell you, I would have loved to have played for you if I'd have played. So let's do it again Monday morning. So thank you for being on with us.
Sounds great. It's always a lot of fun.
All right, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Was that good stuff or what?
That was awesome. How cool was it to find out about the Auburn, kick six to
I've
where
been waiting.
that
I've been
is
waiting for that opportunity.
fantastic. I mean, to not have the call, but then to say, let's put him back there, but then let's swap the edge rusher with the guy that's normally playing safe. I mean, that's fantastic.
Duff, I had
Brilliant.
heard, and
Let me
I
say
wasn't
something
trying-
about Winter Timber real quick, and we'll get
sorry.
back to it. But no, Winter Timber, listen, they are expanding. They're in Athens, Alabama now. They're going to grow in the footprint that is the SEC area. They've got a store they're building in Auburn now, should open by June. They're now about to announce, hopefully soon, something in Memphis, Collierville. So they're looking at Athens, Georgia, Fayetteville, Arkansas. They're open every day of the week. If you're into the shooting sports, Doug, turkey season's coming up. Get in there to Winter Timber. All the gear you need for turkey hunting. We just wrapped up another duck season. Yep. Got it. Chasing a turkey is like chasing a ghost, as MJ says. But everything you need, Winter Timber Outdoors, open 7 days a week. They'll ship it to you. They've got a great staff, an incredible store with all the gear that you want. Bottom line, they know what they're talking about. They'll sell you what you need, and you'll find what you need at Winter Timber Outdoors. And also, right down the street from Winter Timber is Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. Let me just say this. I stopped by yesterday to take some cookies out there to the crew, Charles Hall and Raven and JM. They have a 50% off sale right now. First class gear. They had Ariat, Schaefer, Duck Camp, a lot of good looking gear at 50% off. These great Danner trail shoes, Filson, Barber, men's and women's boots, great looking stuff for the ladies. Valentine's Day is coming up a week from today, the 14th, next Friday. So get out there to HewlettandDunn.com on the square, right next to Memphis. You can't miss it. Nothing beats being there in the flesh. Hopefully Brad Bellamy will be on in a second from Landers. We're hoping he's in a meeting right now. So I'll get to Landers and talk about them here in a few minutes. But, Doug, I know you had point of parliamentary procedure.
Point of order, Rob.
Point of order.
Man, they need to calm down in Washington.
God.
They're not
fast and furious.
They're not used to Elon speed there, are they?
Wow.
Anyway.
On another level.
I appreciate Duff enjoying that. It wasn't LSU, but you were sort of a quasi-Auburn fan that day. But I did not seek, to be clear, I did not seek to take anything away from Gus Malzahn. He was a head coach in that game, and improbably after that LSU road loss, managed to get Auburn to the national championship game with some help from a few teams in late season. But I had heard that Ellis Johnson picked up on that. This is returnable, baby. You think coaching doesn't matter? It's hard as hell to beat Nick Saban Alabama team or LSU team. So, man, it's just so fun. I wanted for posterity to know how did it go down? Mm-hmm. Was it a collective brain trust catch? And, there's some luck involved too. If there's not a need to ice a kicker, Frank, they probably don't buy those extra seconds, not to mention the review. Sure. Was there a second on the clock? They don't buy the time for somebody to figure out. If they're dumb enough to try a 57-yard field goal without wind behind you, then we're going to try to be ready to play. We might lose a game if he hits it, but we're going to play the return here, and it's just one of those amazing coaching moves in a game.
And those long field goals, be it pro or college, every now and again. I remember Odell Beckham Jr. Returned one. I think it was for the Giants early in his NFL career. But you're exactly right. And one of those every several years is a big one. None were as big as kick six.
Yeah,
and how they formed that wall was incredible. Like he said, it was like they practiced it every Friday.
And they didn't trip over each other. That was scary.
And they get pushed back into him. That was the main thing. All those blockers held their line because if one of them gets pushed back, he's got no avenue.
Well, Robinson Thorese, remember
Number
at the very
27.
end.
Please give him room.
Yeah,
Don't
give him
trip.
room.
That would be so Auburn to trip
Oh.
at the 5-yard
Yeah.
line.
Oh my
God.
God.
All right, let's look. We got a packed basketball schedule this
Oh,
weekend.
come
Yeah,
on.
y'all got a big
I-
one for
well,
against
look,
Number
Florida.
1 ranked. Brendan Gator's coming to town.
God,
Florida,
almighty. Listen, what are the things that not scare you, but if you're Auburn, you got to concern, because worry is the absence of faith. Okay,
You
but
saw what I was wearing this morning, right, Rob?
I see
There you
that.
go.
Hey, the size of Florida and the rebounding.
Oh,
They're
good.
big. Now, Handlotten is not going to play Saturday, but they've got 4 big guys and a 7'9" guy.
Yeah.
This game
who's
worries me.
7'9" guy who's of Igor, I think is his name. Eventually, he's going to be out there. But Alabama at Arkansas, Hogs off of 2 big road wins. Florida at Auburn, Mississippi State at Georgia, South
Tricky one.
Carolina at Kentucky, Ole Miss at LSU, Texas A&M at Missouri, Texas at Vanderbilt, Tennessee at Oklahoma. Man, this is like going to the all-you-can-eat buffet at the Mark Twain Cafe in summer and wearing. I saw somebody's been sending me these old commercials from the 70s for these things like Memphis 1955, cleanest city in the world. I'm like, man, that's
It got out of hand.
yeah, they need to clean up the interstates, but still a great city. I love it. But guys, let's hone in on something here. This Florida Auburn game.
Yep.
Todd Golden, this
He's
guy
good.
can coach his ass off.
Bruce Pearl protege.
Yeah. What do y'all think happens here? And then I
This
want to
game,
talk about
I've been
Bama and
following
Arkansas.
Auburn fans have, we are famous for waiting for something bad to happen.
The other shooter drop.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But if you look at there's a writer, Jerry Hennon, I'm sure you've read him, Rob, great Auburn blogger over the years. But he said, Matt, in terms of the analytics, everyone understands that if you make it to the Sweet 16, reseed everybody then, and it's anybody's to take. But except for 1 year in the last 7 or 8 years, the fact is the best analytics, Ken Palm, all of that team has won the NCAA tournament, which only makes Auburn fans more nervous because Auburn is historically, we might be more likely to have something bad happen when we've got all the analytics in our favor. But right now, man, it's just Alabama is unbelievable. Florida has metrics that are right there with Auburn, depending on how you want to cut the data. So I'm worried about Florida coming to town tomorrow, which probably means, Brendan, Auburn will only win by single digits, not by 20.
I'm going to take the opposite of that. I think Auburn's going to be laser focused. I think they're going to defend well at home because they do know that their next 2 games on the road. Now again, they say they don't look ahead, but they know because Vanderbilt is it's like a
weird arena.
It is. It's like the Tar Baby and Brer Rabbit. You don't know what you're going to get from Vanderbilt, but then you got to go to Tuscaloosa. So I think Auburn's going to have a laser focus. They do not want to go into that 2 away game stretch with a loss. I think they take care of Florida.
This current group of teams, these 5 teams in Ken Palm, Auburn, Duke, Houston, Iowa State, and Tennessee blows away any that you can find on record. And the funny thing about that, go ahead and add Alabama to that. Go ahead and add Florida, and there may be another SEC team or 2. So it's a lot of drama as we head to the second half.
Well, y'all thought you were going to have an issue going to Ole Miss last time we talked, and y'all handled that thing. That was never in doubt, and that was a 10-point win. That's like your racehorse is just in hand going down the track. I think Auburn beats Florida, which is going to set up
huge.
Which you'll get past Vanderbilt. That game in Tuscaloosa is going to be incredible. So if y'all go in with just the 1 loss, and I think you will, that's going to be must watch.
I think Frank, if you're a logical fan, not a homer, and I'm probably vacillate between both of those, Rob. I think it's realistic to expect Auburn and Alabama to split. The home team wins both games, but if Auburn can go in there, get to would it be 23-1 going to Tuscaloosa if they win Saturday and early next week?
Yeah.
If you get there with 1 loss and you manage to sneak out of Coleman Coliseum with a win, then it's pretty much over for the SEC regular season.
Especially since you have Alabama coming to y'all at the last game of the season.
Yeah, but Frank's right about this. Your mindset. You do not want to lose at home. You don't want to lose, period. But then you've got to go on the road for those games because Mark Boynton, the coach at Vanderbilt, who came over from Virginia Tech, I believe, he's built and won everywhere he's been. Those kind of coaches give you fits, especially in their first year, because you really don't have a complete book on them to what to expect. Let me say too, Alabama at Arkansas. Cal, they lost a lot of close games this season. Remember, he walked into an empty locker room. I'm talking about John Calipari at Arkansas. And this guy, the big guy, Milicevic, can we buy a vowel for $100? I mean, these check names are tough. But, God, he's 7'2". And listening to Pat Bradley on SEC Network, the shooter, talking about, and that guy really knows his basketball. We got to get him on the show. He's in Little Rock now from Everett, Mass. But damn, 7'2" and can shoot the 3-point. He can do anything. What do you think happens when the 90-plus points a game scoring Alabama Nate Oates offense comes to Bud Walton Arena, which will be jam-packed? Because that win over Texas, by the way, Wednesday was big. And speaking of Texas,
to go into Rupp under those circumstances, when Calipari might have found his mojo that was frankly missing the last couple of years he was at Big Blue.
Well, Arkansas is they've righted themselves. They've won 3 out of the last 4. In fact, they lost to us and lost to Missouri, our only win. So they were reeling. So Calipari's got them, playing better ball. And look, Rob, how many times have we always said this? Alabama, if they're cold from three-point land, that other team's going to be in the game, and especially especially if you're looking, you get the Hogs at home, they can play you tough in their place. So this is Alabama's going to have a tussle, I think.
No, I think it's going to be really tough. And when you look at these SEC basketball venues, smaller is better. Smaller's louder. Now, Bud Walton's around 19,000, but the future, the architecture is the 9,000 to 10,000 seats. Everybody's right on top, and you also create a demand for those tickets. You can't make it so easy. But another one that jumps out at me is going to be this one: Ole Miss at LSU.
Yeah,
Chris Beard, what Ole Miss did to Kentucky Wednesday night. 98-84. They blew them out of the water. Did you know Ole Miss, I think in the second half, or maybe for the game, had 1 turnover? One of my friends, Big Daddy, Chris Lynch.
They've got a good resume, Rob.
Yeah. Chris Lynch said maybe the best half of basketball in Ole Miss history. 1 turnover. And Chris Beard is one of those coaches that demands, he squeezes everything you've got. And as he gets better talent at Ole Miss, they're going to be everybody's nightmare.
We're not playing good basketball right now. I don't see us hitting an upset. And I will tell you, we beat them last year, and it was kind of a grudge match game in Baton Rouge. It kind of got a little chippy at the end. I think Ole Miss is going to come in and hang one on us. I hope I'm wrong. I got a feeling we're staring at a barrel of like 1 and 18, 17 before this whole damn thing's over with. Look, Matt's doing the best he can with what he's got. But I don't see us beating Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss comes in and thumps us. And look, Ole Miss is I think Ole Miss could make a little run, tourney time. So
they could get hot and be like that Auburn 2019 team and make it all the way to Elite 8 or farther.
Yeah, I don't know if they can be that good, but they definitely can make a run to where they get into the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Matchups.
The league, guys, top to bottom, Joe Lenardi's thinking 13 teams. Still got the second half of the season, basically. Everybody's got another 8 or 9 games to play. The team that really, the coach of the year, if it's not Dennis Gates, who is it? Because last year Missouri's 0-19. They even lost in the first round of the tournament in Nashville. Good Lord above. Right now, Missouri's up in the top tier group. A&M, Buzz Williams. Buzz Williams is like Freddy Krueger in those Friday the 13th movies. You know, you just can't get rid of him. He's always in the rearview mirror. Can you name one stud player on the A&M team? But A&M has got to play at Missouri tomorrow. That will be a hell of a – that might be the best X and O game on TV.
But Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma all have a shot at the dance.
They do.
They all could be 20 plus, and if they pick up a game in the tournament, I think they've got a shot. Now Kentucky's going to get on name recognition alone, whether they hook slide in a 20 or not.
Yeah.
But these other teams have a shot at getting in. I agree with him. I think we could get 15 teams in this thing.
The late great ACC. I mean, that passed the top heavy Duke's the class of the league. Duke might be the best team in the country, but there'll be some teams that challenge that assumption.
Yeah.
But man, it's like a church league, Rob, past the top 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
That's about right.
And I hope the voters will take
Direct league.
I agree with Doug.
When they're looking at Broome versus Flagg, and Flagg's an unbelievable elite player, probably going to go higher in the draft maybe than Broome, but I hope that there is somewhere in the calculus is degree of difficulty with opponents.
Well, when Coach K, the end of his career, that man crush sycophant fest that we saw made me vomit. I love Coach K, but
he got out of town right before the posse too.
He didn't like that. I mean, but they made it. It's so Doug pointed out. Yes, there's such a romance, kind of a sickening romance. Cooper Flagg, Duke. That East Coast.
He had 11 points the other night.
11 points, and he's playing.
He's really good. Don't misunderstand. He's very worthy of the honor. But I just hope that it's
and I know they beat Auburn. They can say that, but
Cameron,
I tell you, and Clayton at Florida is a badass. They're every night in this league, you better show up ready to fight, or you're going to get your ass kicked. Because Porter Moser, Oklahoma's coach, think about him, guys. He's good. Doug, I don't know if Sister Janine is still living. Somebody said she is. I'm thinking she's 107. But remember him at Loyola of Chicago?
Oh, yeah.
Oklahoma's been to 5 or 6 Final Fours. We were talking about it yesterday. Billy Tubbs, Wayman Tisdale. I mean, Billy Tubbs looked like Woody Harrelson in Kingpin with the comb over. Hell of a coach, man. A true I mean,
the guy that scares me is the Houston coach. I don't want to.
Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, he's just going to give one game, and he's had struggles getting deep in the tournament. But that's a dangerous opponent, and so is Duke, so is Iowa State. But at least you can feel great. You're going into. It's not that Auburn's veterans have their Social Security card yet, Rob, but they're 24, 25-year-old. Mazara's 25, and then that makes it. You don't worry playing 2 freshmen, like Pettiford and the other kid, but and Pettiford does not look like a freshman, does he?
No, he is just absolute assassin, and he shows up in the big games, and that's
Rob. I'm gonna have to bounce. I'm sorry, guys.
All right, Doug, we'll
buddy.
talk to you this week. See you Tuesday on the show.
See you, pal.
Right, you got it, Frank. We'll wrap it up here. Let me say something real quick, and we'll come back to you. Landers Ford. Brad Bellamy in a meeting. We'll try to get him on Monday. But LandersFordMemphis.com open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. 3 things to look for in a dealership. Service department. Okay, you got to get your vehicle worked on. They'll pick you up at home or at your office, provide round-trip transportation. Number 2, affordable opportunities. Look at this. Edge models, $15,000. Look at the rebates and the price breaks on the MSRP, what you can buy a vehicle for. Landers Ford will work with you, with your credit, with everything, okay? They've got the Ford Power Promise, all right? Number 3, Brad Bellamy and his staff out there have a job. That is to get you in a vehicle. They'll do what it takes. They're great to work with. Kenny Myers is also on the staff out there at Landers Ford. LandersFordMemphis.com. Remember, Houston, Levy, and Poplar Open every day except Sunday. Great people to work with. Let them know you heard about them on Sidelines. And I got to say something, too, about my man Chris Aiken, Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Duck season just wrapped up. Got the youth hunt tomorrow, the veterans hunt on Sunday. You want your dog trained by the very best dog trainer in America. I've known Chris for 30 years in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Find him on Facebook, Web-Footed Kennels. You can't miss it. He has 8 people on the staff, a 237-acre Masters Augusta National equivalent dog training facility. The best sponsors, the best audience in America. Frank, great stuff that you brought up about LSU, about Joe Burrow. Give me your pick on the Super Bowl. I gotta know this because Coach Johnson's right. It is the officials. We're gonna look back. Who knows? But three-peat. Who's ever three-peated?
No one. And here's what's going to happen, Rob, in my humble opinion. Here's, and I don't know if you can hear me. I'm having a problem hearing you.
Yeah,
what's going to happen? I think Saquon Barkley is going to take over this game. Kansas City has had problems stopping the run all year. And I think for the first time, there's so much light shined on the refs and KC that I think it works against them. I think Philadelphia gets the close calls in this one, and I like Philadelphia by a touchdown.
And you know what Coach Johnson said? They're the most balanced team. And
I agree.
They truly are. Okay, look, folks, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Every day you got an opportunity to go help people and make your life better. You can help other people. Frank knows that. Doug knows it. Brendan knows it. Coach Johnson knows it. Find excuses to win. Have a great weekend. Share the show. We'll be back on Monday morning. And watch our new show Tuesdays, 5 p.m. Eastern, Sidelines and AU Undercover. I'll be on with Ronnie Sanders, and Doug Dean will join us Tuesday talking some Tigers. We're going to get this SEC network built like nothing you've ever seen.
And SEC baseball starts in a week, baby. In a week.
And y'all will be dominant as usual.
Hey, that's what a 1-8 team in basketball says. Baseball starts in a week.
That's right. All right. Auburn and Florida tomorrow. Get the TV cranked up. Be watching. See ya.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought-after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.